Hello everyone and welcome to Fuse Room. I'm Alberto as usual, and in this video we're going to talk about Smooth Operator. Super cool name for a plugin made by Baby Audio. It is an EQ, it's not an EQ, we don't know yet, let's find out. Just to give you an idea, in this video we're gonna talk about what turns this song
Stay true. I know there's a place where you belong. If you wait, I come along.
into this.
Stay true. I know there's a place where you belong. If you wait, I come along.
Right? Let's get started. In the world of analog modeling plugins, of user interfaces that resemble things from the past, there are some plugins that instead work on a 100% digital, technology-driven, progress-oriented behavior. And one of these is Smooth Operator. So behind its innocent-looking interface that usually looks pinkish, but you can turn it into greenish or bluish depending on your mood, this plugin is capable of focusing on a couple points in your frequency spectrum and untangle somehow, debox, debrighten, in a very sort of algorithmic way, which is common to a lot of plugins that are coming out these days. The algorithms are getting better, technology is getting better, obviously, so there's a lot of different ways to get into your audio and improve it without necessarily doing that much. And I mean it from a user input standpoint, because these plugins are, fairly simple to operate, and also from a final amount of intervention. So you actually do a lot without doing that much. I don't know if that's, getting the message across, but I think a lot of you know what I mean. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at the interface. I'm gonna drive you through all the functions in my own way. I'm not capable of reading manuals, or bedtime stories. I'm not the kind of guy, but we're gonna go through the interface. And then once we know how it works, I thought we would do an experiment. We would use a Smooth Operator pretty much on every track of a song, listening to the before and after, track by track, and then we'll compare the whole song without and with. The interface is pretty simple. On the top you have the three colors that you can choose. You can turn it off and on through the logos, of the company. And then there's a preset menu, of course, in which you can save and load presets. There's a high resolution mode and a classic mode. I usually use high res, and there is a sidechain on and off, so you can actually use external sidechain to work on another track, which is pretty cool. And then there's a reset button that just resets the EQ. On the bottom, because I like to skip things, there's a solo on and off, and this is an auto solo kind of thing. So when you hover your mouse onto one of the 2 points of intervention, the solo happens, by itself. So it's an automatic kind of solo behavior that isolates that band and allows you to hear where you are actually, operating in terms of Smooth Operator. That makes perfect sense. And, where you're operating. It's fantastic. Then there's a focus button, which goes from 0 to 100. And this is sort of a cue. You could think about it as a cue factor. So the higher the focus, the more the plugin is going to work on a narrower sort of bandwidth and probably even with a little more strength. The output is pretty self-explanatory because sometimes you lose energy and you want to compensate going usually upwards in my case. Then there's a peak or RMS meter. The plugin can be resized, but last but not least, there's the frequency spectrum, the area in which you actually operate Smooth Operator. So you have 2 points that you can use to tell Smooth Operator, please fix my track. That's as simple as that. These 2 points are separated by the center red piece that is, just a barrier that the 2 points cannot cross. And then there's the external parts, the green ones, that are the outer limits. I would call them probably the outer shelves somehow, right? That you can use to further compensate the behavior. So you listen to your track, you find areas that you would like to fix or improve, for example, boxiness in the 200 Hertz, and you just move it down. That's what we're gonna do on these overheads track, just to, give it a try. So as you can hear, it's taking that 400 typical overhead, sort of boxiness, and it's just cleaning it up without me doing much. I actually am doing quite a lot, just for kicks. The track isn't necessarily bad at all, but it's capable of maintaining phase in a very interesting way and just operating, that's the term, into it. So let's try and find out something that can be done here. Obviously, you can set the Q of these 2 points, so that coupled with the focus parameter actually make it very versatile, much more than it seems, because at first it seems like, oh, I only have 2 points that I can use. Well, maybe that's not enough. It is plenty enough, trust me. Right? So that feels really cool. I think this is one of the most valuable plugins to couple with anything else that you have. You might have any sort of plugin, this is going to work with it. It's a perfect complement to anything, because you might have something that emulates analog and at the very end just gives, I don't know, maybe a bloom you don't want, or maybe a halo that's typical of the analog, but you just wanted it to not be there. You can use smooth operator either before or after to just kind of gently fix it. Now let's take this song track by track and let's try smooth operator on it without and then with, and let's comment on it. Obviously, this is not how I would mix a record. I don't know, maybe it would be, the most amazing way to mix it for me. I still don't know. And obviously this is done track by track, so there is a little bit of a loss of context. But this is not our purpose. The purpose is to take all of these tracks, making this song, what it is, and clean them in a way that we can get something different and then kind of understand through this process how smooth operator operates. You know I was gonna say that. Now, kick. Let's hear the kick in solo and before and after. So it removed the thump and kind of gave it a little bit more energy. Now snares, they're combined together. Let's hear it without and then with. It's cleaner. It's losing some of that boxiness again. I'm using it a lot for the 400 kind of sort of mud, which is not necessarily bad in this track, obviously, but we're getting towards the idea of mixing it. So, usually it tends to sort of like gain a lot of energy from a lot of instruments. All right, now overheads, without and with. Now here I'm losing a lot of lows. The reason for this is that I'm kind of wanting the kick to dominate the whole picture, but you could work it out differently. But you can hear how it can work as a normal equalizer somehow, but it keeps the integrity of what it's listening to kind of there. Then there's a room track. This is kind of interesting. I don't remember what I've done. So this seems to me as if it was a room mode that I want to somehow get rid of to lighten up the drums. That could be it. So now there's a lot of little things in here. For example, hi-hat, before and after. right? So the focus on the actual hi-hat piece is increased a lot. The toms don't actually play that much, but I've used it here. Let's hear it without and with. It's kind of cleaner again in the parts that the floor tom usually rumbles a little bit and you want it sort of cleaner. Shakers, before and after. It completely changes the shaker, how it was recorded. It sounds like it was mic'd differently or we use a different mic, but it is a lot more usable. If you're used to using shakers in your recordings, you know that they're always super loud, and that's because of the harmonics and what they have in the 3K that kind of fights against a lot of things. And this is a different way of operating around 3K that keeps the shaker very interesting, very high quality, I would say. Sounds almost like a sample now. And I've done the same thing for the other two shakers. Then there's the tambourine, again, before and after. So I'm gaining some vibe, even in the lows, I would say, somehow. I'm getting some volume too, but I'm getting rid of some heavy high harmonics and resonances that are there. So the ride wasn't that heavy here, but I did it here on the ride as well. So before and after. It's a cleaner ride, has less of a plasticky halo on it. That's the best I can describe it. Then bass, without and with, as usual. Now here, I'm compensating it for you, but there's quite a volume difference because I needed the bass to be louder when mixing it. But I like how the bass has some grit from, I don't know whether it's a pedal or just the bass itself or the amp or whatever, and it's still there. It's still there once the smooth operator has processed it. It doesn't become a clean bass. It's still that kind of gritty bass track, well, still clean, that is there in, in the original recording. Now, acoustic guitars, two of them. Let's try this without and with. Very interesting. It sounds more processed in a way. So what I would like to point out is that you don't really need to take the life out of every recording. And I'm doing this now as an example. So I'm usually going, I wouldn't say twice as much as I would do, but kind of on the heavier side. But you can really hear what it does. It makes it better from a mixed standpoint, but it doesn't mean that you always need to carve those frequencies and that the 150 whatever on the acoustic guitar is the devil. That's absolutely not true. I think these tracks were recorded fine and there's the right amount of life from a real kind of recording that you would expect. However, when you mix a record, you don't always want to have a perfect, meticulous story of these people in a recording studio. You want to make a sort of a symbol, a stereotype of the message that the lyrics have. So this cleanup process can be, productive to get to the mix. That's what I wanted to say. Then there's a lot of electric guitars that I most basically worked around the 500 hertz. So these are all together. I think we could listen to them all together, before and after again. Again, it was beautiful without, but I think the soundstage becomes more, I'm a record, I'm being produced. So there's obviously all the shades, of processing in between. You're gonna be able to choose what you want to do. But I think it's a very high quality polish that this plugin Smooth Operator is capable of giving. So then there's lead vocals, without and with again.
Gonna stay true. I know there's a place where you belong, and if you wait, I come along. Love happens in its own time. I know that you gotta stay true. I know there's a place where you belong, and if you wait, I come along with you. Love happens in its own time. I know that you gotta stay true. I know there's a place where you belong, but if you wait.
Now, the vocals, again, even in this case, they sounded fine. And they sounded a bit more even in the frequency spectrum, without the highs being that prominent. And that's usually the case if you have, kind of a balanced, not too bright mic and preamp. However, here I want to get closer to what the vocals, need to be in a mixed context. So they need to kind of pierce through, and I wanted to do it instead of just bumping the highs, which you see I'm letting go nicely up towards 20K, by reducing actually the presets at 1K and the 200, so that the two things kind of balance themselves, but the vocals then are a little bit more spread out, in the frequencies, especially in the highs. So there's what? There's a couple more tracks, two backing tracks, male and female vocals. And let's listen to this without and then with.
Stay true. I know there's a place where you belong, and if you wait, stay true. I know there's a place where you belong, and if you wait.
So here I did a lot, but I didn't mean to do that much. There's a distance in the tracking of the female backing vocals that is still there. And that's fascinating because Smooth Operator is not a de-reverb kind of plugin. So it preserves that distance at which the vocals were tracked, but it just gets a little bit less of the room mode. So it makes the backing vocal a little bit more, I wouldn't say sharp, but kind of on the edge of being produced. Again, that's the term. Same for the male vocals in the backing. They are sort of affected with a sort of a vocodery kind of thing. And even if it's a slight effect, it's still there. Smooth Operator does not touch that tone, that color, as it happened for the bass, which is, something to be appreciated because it's not perceived as a problem by the plugin. It's just actually, the plugin kind of works around it. So that's pretty cool. So now let's listen to the final chorus of this song without all of these smooth operators that I've put, and then with. And then we're gonna draw our conclusions.
Stay true. I know there's a place where you belong, and if you wait, I come along. Love happens in its own time. I know that you gotta stay true. I know there's a place where you belong, and if you wait, I come along with you. Love happens in its own time. I know that you gotta stay true. I know there's a place where you belong, and if you wait, I come along. Love happens in its own time. I know that we gotta stay true. I know there's a place where you belong.
So I did take some mixing decisions in terms of volume when compensating. So some tracks are being processed by Smooth Operator, but kind of move in the sound stage, like the bass and stuff. But it is kind of a real world example. I mean, if I were to use these to this extent, I would still want to not be scientific and keep everything where it needed to be. I would want to go towards the main task, because let's not forget, we're not here to just do scientific tests. We're here to find out ways to mix in a way that sounds better than it already does. So, as usual, I hope this was interesting to you and made you think about ways to improve your mixes and make your music sound, as usual, even better than it already does. I'll be here. See you soon in the next video. Thank you very much for joining me. Ciao.